Hey guys, it's Tana and welcome back to my channel. We're going to learn how I make my stencils today and also make a couple of cards. So coming up is a picture of some plastic you can use, and I will link it in the description below. This isn't the one I use, but you can use it. The next picture is actually the stuff that I have at my house and I use. I did run out, so I didn't have a picture to take. I got this off of Amazon. And let's see if I can get this voiceover done before the kids come in from swimming. As of right now, it's about 7 p.m. and you guys are going through the encouragement hop. So I have a 6 by 6 inch piece of paper here. You can use anything, printer paper, copy paper, cardstock. And 6 by 6 is what I cut the plastic to. I don't know if that's the standard size of most stencils, but that's what the size I use for mine. So on the paper itself, I put a 1/4 inch edge all the way around it, and then I am making 2 center lines on each side of the square to find my middle point. I will say that I'm not going to show you guys how to copy other people's stencils. I think that would be wrong of me to do. I am going to make up my own design and describe to you a couple different ways to make stencils. I will tell you that any stencil that I have remotely copied from a company, I do eventually intend on buying. I may just want it at the time and can't afford it. So moving on, now that I've given you that disclaimer, I've decided there's this stencil by Catherine Pooler that I want with a lot of like swoops on them. They kind of look like paisleys without the middle. And that's what I decided to draw for today's stencil. So I'm just kind of starting from the center point out and just doing my swoops in different directions, different sizes. I mean, there's really not much to it. And if you're not much of a drawer, you can still come up with a simple pattern. Whether it's using your ruler and making straight lines, making pinstripes, anything like that. I mean, there's even stencils out there with names like watercolor stripes where they have tiny curves and nicks in them, and you can do all that freehand. It's not hard. Even the most drawing challenged can come up with a couple stencil patterns of their own. I am going to show you another way to do your own stencils besides freehand drawing. So have no fear, there is another way if you really prefer not to draw. So I mentioned the encouragement hop. I hope you all have a chance to go through it. There are no prizes, but it's a chance to show support for people who love what they do and just want to share it with everybody else. Plus, encouragement cards are something I know I don't make often, and it should be something that is a staple in the crafting community. So here we are. I'm done with my drawing, and I put a piece of 6 by 6 inch stencil over it. And now I am tracing my drawing with a black Sharpie marker. I prefer a thin tip, because you can, if your drawings are intricate, you can get into all those little fine details and points. And don't worry, I'm not going to make you watch all this. And in case I forget to tell you, you will notice that when I start to cut it out, because I don't cut the whole thing out with an X-Acto blade, but I do cut one of them out to show you it can be done. I flip it over. I just didn't want to forget to tell you that. This plastic, I don't know if they're all going to be the same, but this one that I have tends to smear, and I'm left-handed, so when I move my hand around, I tend to smear where I have already drawn. Even if it's dried, if your hand sits there long enough, it will smear. So I flip it over onto my glass mat. You can still see the design from the other side, and it saves you from messing up your design before you've even cut it out. Like I said, only show you me cutting out one swoop with an X-Acto blade. I would not advise that for most people. It would definitely save your hand if you had another way of cutting this out. I show you with the X-Acto blade once, and then I proceeded to cut this one out with my brother's scan and cut machine and moved on to the next way you can make a stencil. And then I end up coming back and showing you the completed cutout stencil. Now, every cutting machine is different. I know that for my brother's Scan and Cut DX, there's the finished stencil, and I'm about to cut out one of those swoops with the X-Acto blade. My brother's Scan and Cut is automatic, so I can put my plastic in there and it's going to read the depth or thickness of whatever material I put in there, and it's going to adjust the cutting accordingly. So all I had to do was stick it on the mat, make sure it was stuck down good, make sure I fed it in there and let it scan it, and then it did all the cutting and I didn't have to worry about it. Now, as you can see, do not cut if you're going to use an X-Acto blade the way I do. You should never cut towards yourself, and you should never cut towards your hand that's holding down your project. I am definitely not somebody you want to copy cutting methods with an X-Acto blade from. So there's that first swoop. I have cut it out, and I'll show you how I just popped it out with the tip of the X-Acto blade. So that's definitely a way you can do it. And if you don't like the black lines on your stencil after you're all said and done, you can get rid of that by using some antibacterial hand sanitizer. It doesn't have to, well, I mean, they're all antibacterial. I don't know why I said that. And a rag, and that will take permanent marker almost off of almost anything. So that's in the Brother Scan and Cut right now, and now I'm going to show you the second way you can make, that I know of, that you can make stencils. So I have this little this die with 3 different size stars on it, and this was the first time I ever made a stencil with the Gemini Junior. So you do notice I cut this first one out twice and it still didn't come all the way out. I ended up figuring out I had to use my metal shim with it. But once I put the metal shim in there, it zipped through those things like a breeze. Now, it is a little time consuming to put it back in over and over again, but honestly, it's not as time consuming as using an X-Acto blade. And if you're making your own stencil using dies, you're saving yourself, what, $6 or $7 a stencil. So that's all I did was move this set of stars around and around in the pattern that I wanted, and I don't have a stencil with stars on it yet, so I just wanted one that had stars all over. I think eventually I might try to do one with like falling stars. And while you guys are watching that, I also wanted to tell you that I've also made my own like border stencils, where I cut one to be slightly bigger than a size of a card front, and then I cut a shape out of the center. So I have one that's an oval and one that's a circle, and they come in handy for making like scenes where you want a nice shaped border around it. So I was thinking about doing a couple more shapes for those as well. So here you see that I've already pulled the swoops off of the Brother Scan and Cut mat, and now I'm all finished making this star stencil with the die cutting machine. And now we're going to make a couple cards as soon as I show you these stencils up close and personal, and that's really all there is to it, guys. I'm sure that you could find patterns on your cutting machines that you like and would like to see as a stencil where it required no tracing and drawing at all. It's really up to you. Now we're going to make a couple cards. We don't use the swoop stencil, but we do use the star stencil. So I'm just cutting these down. Most of my card fronts are usually cut down to leave some type of a border, whether it's an 1/8 of an inch all the way around or a 1/4 inch. I think I cut these to be a 1/4 inch all the way around because I wanted to mat the second one behind with black cardstock behind it. So on this first one, we're going to take my brand new Distress Oxide color. Come on, you know I had to use it. The Victorian Velvet. And I'm just going to ink blend across this entire piece of paper. And these are both done on Bristol Smooth cardstock. I think this is such a pretty pink color, like more vintage. It reminds me of Victorian times, hence the name, I guess. After I do both of these panels, I do distress them both with some water from a spray bottle. So this first one is all done. And with the second one, I wanted to use that new Catherine Pooler color polished that I have. See, I already knew what I wanted to put on top of these, what colors, so I already knew what I wanted the bases to look like. I wanted them to kind of have the same theme color going on, but be kind of different in color. So this is more of like a peachy, pinkish red. And think it's a really pretty color, and if you hear an interruption in my voiceover, it's because people keep texting me, and instead of swiping it off my screen so I can see what I'm talking about, I accidentally pushed on one. Okay, so I'm already done inking up that background, and now I'm going to spray them both with water. And I don't know if I show you, but I also dry the panels with my heat gun, and I dry them from the front and the back to try to keep them from curling up. I don't know if you guys have ever tried that, but I'm sure if you've done ink blending or smushing with water, you've certainly done that. As you can see, the one on top is already flipped over. Excuse me. So for the first one, we're going to use the rice patty stencil from Neat and Tangled, because I've been dying to use it ever since I bought it. And many of you know that I've been waiting for that stencil to come back in stock for quite a while. So I'm going to use some Nouveau Mousse in Cornflower Blue, and I'm going to use a makeup brush or the blending brush to blend that on top of the stencil. I don't want a thick coat of it, I just want enough of it for the color to show through separately from the Victorian Velvet. And I really was stunned when this was all said and done with how well these colors went together. It really is a gorgeous blue color. Doesn't at all remind me of, like, you guys remember when you would get a brand new box of Crayola crayons and you would get the Cornflower Blue? I do not remember it looking like this. So this one's all done, and I pick it up and set it aside to dry. And then, of course, you know, I'm anal, so I take a break and I clean up my whole area. So here's the star stencil that we made, just to show you guys they work just as well as any other stencils. And I put my pixie spray on that and waited the allotted time, which is 60 seconds. And now I'm going to blend on top of this one, which has the polished background, polished by Catherine Pooler, with the Nouveau Mousse in Aquamarine. And this is another one. It came out really pretty. I didn't realize that the colors would remind me of a American holiday, but it really does once you take the stencil off. You have to pay attention when you're blending with the blending brushes and the mousse to make sure you have all the spots colored and your other color isn't showing through. That happened to me with both stencils, and I just kept going over it till I didn't see any pink color underneath. And these really, they didn't take long to dry at all. I did these and then I went back outside to finish my steps for the day, because I'm doing 10,000 steps every day, which ends up being 4.3 miles, but only 300 calories burned. You guys believe that? 4.3 miles and only 300 calories burned. Anyway, they probably were dry before I came back in, but I had 5,000 more steps to do. So I was very excited to use my Stamp Market Skinny Upper Alpha dies. So I cut out the word thanks. Now originally I was going to put this on the fog card base and pop it up on foam tape and then put those letters back in, but indented, so it was kind of like an inlay. But I don't know, I wanted it to be where you could barely see the word, but something was holding me back. And I just liked the way it looked on the fog card base with the gray coming through the letters so well that I just left it alone. I did put the A back in, however, you'll see soon, so I could put that little tiny sliver that's supposed to be in the center of the A back onto the card where it's supposed to be. I will use that word cut out of that base on another card though. I think it looks really cool the way it was cut out of the rice patty stencil design. So here I'm just making sure I have enough foam tape. I always use too much foam tape. I know I do, but I'm always like thinking to myself, well, what if they push on this spot and it just sinks the whole card and leaves an indentation, and then I put way too much foam tape on. So here I just set that aside. I blended some more of the aquamarine onto a piece of cardstock and then cut out the word thanks. And I also cut it out of black cardstock. There's 4 layers of that thanks word there layered on top of each other. I spared you the agony of watching me glue together all 4 and just left the top layer. And then that thanks comes with a shadow die, which I cut out of the black velvet satin cardstock from Tonic that I just bought. So here I've very carefully glued that turquoise thanks onto the black one, and I chose the black for the depth behind it because of the black shadow. I didn't want to see white in between the black shadow and the aqua thanks. So that's why I did it in black cardstock. And that die came from, I'll have it linked below, but it came from Simon Says Stamp, and I think it was Simon Says Stamp and CZ Design that came out with it. Some type of collaboration. I remember when I typed in just Simon Says Stamp, I couldn't find that die. So, just a little tip in case you're looking for it and the link below doesn't work or something. So now I'm just going to put my popped up background onto the fog card base, and the fog of course comes from Simon Says Stamp, made ever popular by Corin Wiskin. She has got me hooked on using gray backgrounds. She's right, they really do look better than white a lot of the time. And the other card is going to be made with a steel gray card base, and the steel gray is from My Favorite Things. I was really surprised at the price. I think it was like 6 or 7 sheets for $1.99, and it's 100-pound cardstock. So I picked up a pack of that on my last Simon Says Stamp order. And there I am putting that little sliver in there in the center of the A. Man, it was a pain to get that A straight before I put that sliver in there. And then I kind of had to hold it down because the piece of foam tape was so tiny. I had to hold it down so that the A didn't take it back up with it. If you know what I'm talking about, Vern. Alright. So, why does it look like I'm not recording a darn thing right now? I guess we'll find out soon enough. I didn't realize it took so long to get this thing out of there. There we go. I'm sorry for the silence. I kind of feel like, do I really want to keep talking if I find out it didn't record what it was supposed to record? My headphone's been acting wacky lately. So here I'm going to glue the thanks right onto the front of this card, and that front has already been matted on a piece of black cardstock. There's only a slim line, probably about 1/8 of an inch all the way around showing of the black, but it was enough to make a difference when it goes onto the card base. And I used my Lawn Fawn glue for that, and I put a block on it real quick to make sure it stays down before I glue it onto my card. I really love the way that aquamarine looks on the black, especially on the shadow. It looks really good. And then it kind of ties in together. That black shadow kind of ties in with the black mat behind the card front. I don't know what I'm doing there. Oh, there it is. There's the block, you guys. This is so weird. It's like showing me that it's actually at the beginning of the video, but I'm seeing the parts I'm talking about right now. I don't know how else to explain it. So I'm just going to pop that on with some Nouveau Deluxe adhesive. I didn't want to pop that one up on foam tape because the thanks had so many layers already. I just kind of wanted that to be the only thing that had dimension. And then I think I end up, nothing additional goes on to that card I'm working on right now, but I do end up putting like 3 in corners, the right top corner and the bottom left of the Nouveau Cloud Circle. They're like confetti, and they're kind of iridescent. I have forgotten the name of them. Hold on. Crystal Cloud Circles. Pure Sheen Confetti. That's what they're called. It was just enough to add a little something to that card up above. Excuse me. So there it is. Just 3 there and 3 down in the bottom left. And that really wraps up these cards, you guys. I want to thank you so much again for watching, and if you're not a subscriber and you like what you see, make sure to hit that subscribe button and then also hit the notification button so you can be notified of monthly giveaways. And speaking of giveaways, it's going to be popping up here soon. I didn't record anything. This month's gifts are going to be a surprise, and actually, because it's technically August, I'm going to pick 2 winners. So that takes care of July and August. And then in September, I'm going to do the gift certificate that I was talking about. The summer's been so busy and so much has been going on that I didn't want to not follow through. It's just being delayed. So plus, you guys wouldn't even believe what I've been through this today. I mean, family emergency, ungrateful kid. I don't even want to get into it. But anyway, the rules and regulations for the giveaway will be in the description box below. And until then, thanks for watching. Bye bye.